Can any of you give me an example of the look? Like, show me your parents' look. What is that look like? You are busted. You are in for it. Anybody want to volunteer and demonstrate the look? Anyone? Come here, Jess. Or you can just stand. Just stand there. Just. All right, what is it? Whoa! She even had some of the pigeon going, you know. Anybody else? Anybody else want to show us their parents' face? Mine was, all right, ready? Oh, hands on the hips, big eyes. Okay, nice. Thank you. All right. Whoa, really big eyes and shaking the head like, oh, gee. Nice. Okay. Very good. Any others? Mine was this. Growing up, I'd walk through the door, and my mom or dad, they both had the same look, I think because they spent so much time together. I'd walk in, and they'd be like, and immediately, the one word came out of my mouth when I saw that look. What do you think it was? Wasn't a swear word. What?
Sorry.
Not sorry.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. What? What? Like, my motto was, play as dumb for as long as you can, right? Just what do they have on me? What do they, because sometimes they just like throw accusations out there. It's like, you did? No, I did. It was my brother's. At least I'd say it was my brother's. You walk in, you know that you're busted. You're like, what? And they just go, right? The claws come out, the teeth come out, and your defenses go up, and you're just like, Now, in that moment, you've got this option. You can either, let's say you did it. Let's say that you are, in fact, guilty of what you're getting, or whatever it may be. Let's say you're guilty of that. You have an opportunity at that point to either go, yeah, I did that. Something's got to change, or I'm sorry, I won't do that again, and recognize what you did, or fight it and be like, no, or what's the big deal? Who cares? Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Why are you being such a jerk? Whatever you may do to fight that. You have this opportunity to either gain something from it in terms of an understanding, or you know what? Yeah. What I did was not okay. It should not happen again. I'm sorry. Or reject it. We're in this series called The Church in the World, where Paul has gotten a letter from the Christian church in Corinth. Corinth was a huge city, a metropolis, and it was like kind of the center of the world at that point, one of the centers of the world. And they were asking Paul about all kinds of things. They were also telling him how things were going in the church. Paul had spent about 1.5 years in Corinth establishing the church, helping the Christians, the people who put their faith in Jesus, understand what it meant to really put their faith in Jesus. Helping them understand, look, your life should look different than the world around you. Not everything is going to make sense to the world. Not everything that God is calling you to do and ways that God is calling you to live is going to be something where the world looks at it and goes, oh, well, of course. Set up boundaries around your life. Yeah, that makes sense. Does the world like boundaries? No. Freedom at all costs. Whatever you need to do to get to do whatever you want to do. The world isn't always going to think this is a good idea. He spent about 1.5 years with them, walking with them, encouraging them, and then he gets this letter. And they ask him about some of the ways that, well, what do we do when we got people suing each other. We've got people not treating each other kindly. We've got people going into the pagan temples and worshiping and eating meat that's sacrificed to demons. And we've got, what are we supposed to do? And Paul's been addressing this kind of stuff. Now we get into a portion of this letter where Paul talks about something that they told him about when it comes to them getting together as a group, as a church body, as a community. Now, community was designed by God. We were designed to be interactive, relational people. Do you realize that? All of us. whether you would consider yourself super outgoing or super shy, we were designed for relationship. And we were designed for all kinds of relationships. All of my friends weren't as calm and subdued as I am, right? Some of them are like really like out there and hyper and, you know, that, and they need love too. Yeah. We need all kinds of relationships. God knew that. God designed us for that. So, Paul gets into this portion of the letter where they've been telling him how things have been going. They've been telling him how church has been. You know, just like this. Now, it looked a little different back then, but there was a gathering of believers that would come together, and they had told him how things were going. And Paul, in chapter 11, verse 17, so if you have your Bible, you can open it up to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 7, starting in verse 17. Paul gets really hardcore with them right here. And he says, you know what? With regard to what you mentioned about what's going on in church, what's been going on in your youth group, I've got nothing good to say to you. The Corinthian church just walked through the door. And Paul is standing there going, or whatever your look is. Paul is looking at them and going, I know what you did. And it's almost like you told me this stuff thinking that I was going to be okay with it. Thinking that I was going to be like, oh, what? It's causing hurt and brokenness in people. It's dividing the church. It's causing people who want a faith in Christ not to want to have anything to do with Christians and go the other way. And you thought that I was just going to be like, yeah, Christianity's not for some people. Here, he goes, look, I've got nothing good to say to you when it comes to this stuff. I'm so disappointed. And what has been created, what's supposed to be for God's glory, when we come together, whether it's for youth group on Wednesday nights, or on Sunday mornings, or up there in the worship center, or in a house at a Bible study, what is supposed to be a time where God is honored, where God can bring life, you've been destroying people. You've just been going along with stuff, and here's it. Paul gets kind of secret agent on them. And he goes, there's people among you who are trying to destroy the church. Now, the tendency is to believe, it was then, and it may be still now, to believe that, oh, well, everybody who comes to church only wants good stuff to happen. Everybody who walks through the door only wants relationships to flourish and only wants God to be honored, and so let's just go with it. Meanwhile, because that's not true, people were getting caught up in drama. That's right. In the Bible, in church, there was drama. Have you ever known church drama? Okay? It can be all kinds of different things. But people were beginning to gossip about one another. People were coming into the church for the purpose of starting rumors. People who had something against their neighbor would come into the church and start, hey, Dylan, you should hear what Maddie did. Oh my gosh. I have this fence. She totally drove her camel right through my fence. Just knocked it right over. And now Dylan tells Jessica. And Jessica tells third row Tim. And third row Tim, we've got two third row Tims. Uh-oh, the world has changed. Okay, so, and all of a sudden, there is all this anger and bitterness sweeping through the church. And here, Paul is going, look, we need to be cautious. We need to be cautious of the things that are going on in church. We should be on the lookout for things that are happening that are not honoring to God, that are not life-giving to people. And we need to not be okay with this. What Paul is addressing is the church, the people who were established in the church. Some of you have been around here for a long time. You would call Exit 83 like your home group. You know, this is where you love to come, and this is what you do. And they were just letting stuff go. Oh, so-and-so's talking about so-and-so? probably true, right? What? So-and-so's mad at so-and-so? Oh, well, whatever. Let them work it out. And what Paul is saying is there should be a difference. You should look around, not for the sake of judging each other and going, does Rachel really love Jesus? But we need to look around and go, with the people who claim to love Jesus, do their attitudes and their actions reflect that? And if not, we can't just sit back and go, whatever. It was bringing division in the church. It was causing people to come against each other. And Paul is going, this is not all right. Then he gets into a practice that we are part of. On at different times, and it's not on a regular schedule, but we do something called communion. Now, for us, communion tends to be part of a service, all right? It tends to be an event within a service. It's not the whole gathering. It's not the whole time that we're together typically, but it's usually something where we take a moment and we take communion. We take the cracker, which represents Jesus' body. We take the cup. We're not doing it yet, Austin. We take the cup. And see, we've got secret codes that you guys don't know about. It's like Austin was keyed in on the word communion because I told him that. And so he's good. He was ready. So we'll take the bread, which represents Jesus' body that was broken for us. We take the cup, which represents the blood of Jesus, meaning that it's a new promise from God that our sins can be washed away and we can be made clean. And it's sort of an act of, we do it in remembrance of Jesus. Well, back in these times, the service, the communion service, was an elaborate gathering. It was an event. It wasn't just part of an event, it was the event. And they would gather together, and here's how it worked. Everybody had different amounts of money. Everybody had different wealth. Everybody had different jobs and different positions and things like that. And so the way it worked is that everyone came and contributed to the group. It would be like saying, hey, we're going to have a potluck, okay? And you're going to bring a side dish. You're going to bring a main course. You're going to do the, and it was kind of just divvied out according to what people were able to bring. And what would happen is that the very wealthy, would they have more to bring or less to bring? More to bring. They were able to bring more. Wealthy people in those days often did not have to work the same kinds of jobs or the same kinds of hours that the poorer people had to work. Typically, the poorer people were out in the field at sunup, and they were there until sundown. If you were the field owner or the field manager, maybe you went out there, made sure everybody got started, and then you were done for the day. Maybe you needed to check in a little bit later in the afternoon, but you certainly weren't working the kinds of hours that the poorer people were working. So here's what would happen. The wealthy people would make all this tremendous food, or have all this tremendous food made. They would gather it together. They'd look at their watch and go like, okay, communion doesn't start until 6 o'clock. It's 1:15. What am I going to do with the rest of my day? Gosh, I've got the food's ready. Hey, Mike, your food ready? It is? Is it good? You want to meet at the church? No, not at 6 o'clock. Let's go right now. Okay, I'll see you there. Call Lucy. Lucy, is your food ready? It is? Is it good? You want to go to the church? And they would all gather up. They would meet at the church. They would set out this incredible spread of spectacular food. They'd stand back and look at it. And you remember that scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where they walk into the room, the edible room, where, they walked in and they're just like, and as soon as he said, That's the second Willy Wonka reference I've made in like a week. Just coincidentally. He gone. I'm sorry, but he... Anyway, as soon as he went like this, they just went at it. Here, they're at the church. They had this incredible food. The food was meant for who? Everybody. All right? It's 1:15, maybe 1:45. Church doesn't start till 6. All the people who had to work a full day aren't going to be there for another 4 hours. They look at all this food on the table and they go, let's eat. Why not? And they just scarf it down. They eat all of it. Maybe leave a few of the scraps. Maybe leave the crock pot full of green beans because nobody likes green beans, you know, and just left over. And oh, here's some. We'll combine the mashed potatoes and the yams and the stuffing all onto one plate, and it can. But all the good stuff was gone. There wasn't much left at all. Not much left to drink. Not much left to eat. And by the time people came in from work, there was hardly anything left. Meanwhile, all the rich people were sitting back and they're laughing. I mean, imagine if you walked in and all you saw all over the place, if we told you for an event, hey, we're going to have pizza, it's going to be awesome, tons of food, and you walked in and just saw empty pizza boxes all over. You see the grease. You know that there was pizza in it. You see empty candy wrappers laying all over the ground, and you see that the worship team is sitting around going, oh my gosh, that was so good. What would that say to you? What would it say to you? It's rude. They're greedy. What? It would say, look, you didn't get to be part of something that the important people got to be part of. Right? You didn't get to be included in something that some phone call was made. Somehow you get into this little inner circle and you get special treatment. And if I were in that position and I came in and I found that I wasn't part of this, it would cause all kinds of problems in my heart. Now, it wasn't just a party. This was communion. This was supposed to be community. This was supposed to be done in remembrance of Jesus. So not only were they feeling left out of the community, they were also taking on some of these feelings of, oh, well, I guess I'm not important enough to get to participate with God either. So there was a selfishness. There was this act going on by people who loved Jesus, but they weren't caring for the people around them. They looked around and they were just wanting to go through their ritual. They were just wanting to do their church thing, but they weren't considering anyone around them and how they were called to do this in remembrance of Jesus, to do this as a community. And I think about this anytime that I see new people come in, where my tendency may be to, well, I got to be busy, and I've got stuff to run around and do, and I've got to make copies, and I got to check in with this person, and I got to do this. How important is it for me to stop and go, you know what? I haven't met that person. I want to make sure that they know that I'm glad they're here. How about you? We've got so much entertainment in this room, and I'm not just talking about the people. We have a pool table, we've got foosball, we've got air hockey, we've got an arcade machine, we've got, well, sometimes we have giant Jenga. We've got all kinds of stuff to keep us busy, to keep us focused on ourselves. What goes through your mind when you see somebody that you don't recognize? What goes through your mind when you see someone that maybe you've seen them here before, but you've never found out their name? This is one of the things that Paul would look at, and he goes, I've got nothing good to say to you. And this can't just keep going on where I've got my little pocket of friends. I've got what I like to do. And anybody else, sorry, you're too late to the party. What, you just started coming to youth group? You should have started coming when I started coming, and then you could be part of our friend group. And you guys, this isn't me like slamming you. This is me too. Well, you know, I am the youth pastor. I must have important things to do. Paul would go, you're destroying community. You're destroying what was intended to bring life and to bring people into a relationship with Jesus. Whatever we do here should bring people into a relationship with Jesus, but instead, it was dividing the church. And Paul gets on them in terms of they came and they ate all that. You couldn't wait. And here, he even says it right here in verse 22. Don't you have homes to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God by humiliating those who have nothing? What should I say to you? Should I praise you? Certainly not in this matter. He's going, I get that you're not out in the fields working all day and that maybe you're able to come to youth group early and hang out and maybe you call your friends and you're like, hey, I'll meet you there. All wonderful things. Great. Fantastic. But what he says is, do you despise the church of God so much that you would humiliate those who don't have what you have, who don't have the friends that you have here, who aren't as connected to the church as you are here, aren't as connected to the group? And he views it, Paul points out, it's an offense to God. It's not just offending the people, it's offending God. Because this is supposed to be community. This is supposed to be life-giving. And this is where he brings in the spiritual dynamic of it. So then, whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of sinning against the body and the blood of the Lord. Now, he's talking specifically about communion. Now, remember, communion wasn't, oh, let's pass the plate, let's pass the cup. He's talking about the event of coming together, coming into community, and doing this in remembrance and honor of Jesus Christ. If you do this in an unworthy manner, you're guilty of sinning against the body and blood of the Lord. Everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat the bread and drink the cup. Before we just come here and play the church game, before we just go through all the routines and all the things that we're used to because we have friends here, or okay, it's time to sing. Okay, it's time to sit and listen to Jeff talk. Oh, it's time to play foosball. We need to consider, God, what are you calling me here to do? Who do you want me to talk to? And I realize that for some, probably all of us, I mean, there are a few people that I know who are just like, I can talk to anybody at any time. But for all of us, there's probably some sort of like, okay, I can do it. You know, and we have to kind of talk ourselves up to do it. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we talking to each other? Why aren't we welcoming one another? Why aren't we bringing people into this place? And our hearts would be, I want you to be as connected as I am to this place. Hi, new person that I don't know, and I don't know whether I'm going to be best friends with you or not, but I don't even care because I want this to be a place where you get life. Are we willing to do that? And if we're not, we're kind of just, well, it's bad communion. We're just going through the motions. We're just kind of doing what we want to do, being selfish, being greedy, looking out for ourselves. And what Paul is pointing out here is that you're guilty of sinning against Jesus because this wasn't his intent. His intent was for this to be a life-giving place. And some of you have received life here, yeah? Some of you, this is a place where you're like, that's why I keep coming back, because I get so much life here. Through the relationships, through the stuff that God's doing, through our small groups, whatever it may be, you keep coming back. How badly do you want that for somebody else? And Paul calls it sin if we don't. Paul says you're just going through the motions. You're taking the bread, you're taking the cup, and you're doing it for you, not for God. Today, we're going to have an opportunity to take communion, okay? And let me explain this to you, what this is. First of all, what we should be doing right now is communing with God. We should be here with a focus of going, God, what do you want to do? God, what are you leading me to? What do you need to show me? What do you need to wake me up to? See, Paul wrote this letter not to just smack them on the head. He didn't write this letter and he's not being hard on them because he hates them. He is saying, look, there is life that God has for you. And the way that you're doing it, the way that they were doing it, was bringing death. It was bringing division. It was making people never want to come back. What does this place look like to you? Maybe you're here today and this is your first time and you're like, I'm giving it a try. Maybe you're here today and you've been here a couple times, but then you stopped coming, but you thought, you know what? I'm going to give it another try. Maybe you're here today and you haven't missed a Sunday or a Wednesday in 3 years. What is this place going to be to you? It should be a place where those of you who are established, who are here, this is your home. We are called to reach out and bring others in. You don't get out of it. You don't get to say, oh, well, I'm sure there's other people. It's you. How will you respond to that? And remember, in the beginning, when I told you, you've got a choice. When Paul is going, I've got nothing good to say to you. Or if I'm standing up here and going, you know what? I see lots of circles of people. And it's hard to break into those circles of people. I can break into them because I'm obnoxious. And I'm like, I'm coming in. Nope, I'm going to enter into your conversation. You don't have a choice. That's not easy to do. And it's not what most people would do. When I stand up here and I encourage you and say, I want this to be a place where all of us are looking for new people and going, hey, I'm really glad you're here. Let me introduce you to somebody. I want that. I hope you have a choice. When I stand up there and do that, you can either go, you know what? You're right. I haven't been doing that. I've been looking out for me. Been hanging out with only my friends and I haven't been on the lookout. Or you can go, oh, well, no, it's not me. Or other people can do that and you can blow it off. But we're going to take communion here today, together. The physical act of communion, which is taking the cracker and taking the juice in remembrance of Jesus. But do you see the contradiction between going, I'm going to remember that Jesus loved me enough, that he wanted to forgive my sins and take the punishment that I deserve so that I could be part of the family, but I'm not going to do that for anybody else. I don't even care whether anybody else joins our group. I kind of like our group the way it is. Do you see the contradiction? And this is where Paul is going. You need to understand that if you drink the bread, if you drink the cup and eat the bread with a heart that is not desiring to honor him, you're sinning. You're drinking, he says, you're drinking condemnation on yourself because you're doing this just for the sake of going through the routine. So right now, Ben, could you hit the lights? Right now, I want to give you a moment. And I'm not telling you all of this, and Paul certainly wasn't telling the church all of this to scare you away from taking communion. Communion is something for believers in Jesus Christ to do. To remember that he took the punishment that we deserve. He allowed his body to be killed so that we would not have to suffer that. We do this in remembrance and understanding that we live against God and we need to be forgiven. And you can't be good enough. You can't earn God's love. You can't deserve it. He just gives it to you. And if you're here this morning and you have given your heart to Jesus, then communion is meant for you. It's meant to be something that you do with a heart that goes, heal me, lead me, and help me to be the person that you've made me to be. And And here it says, everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat the bread and drink the cup. And I want us to do that. Again, not because, oh my gosh, if you go and do that, but that you would think about it. And maybe you need to repent. Maybe you need to go, God, and confess and go, God, my heart hasn't been for other people, it's been for me. Change my heart and allow me to take the bread and the cup in honor of you doing that work in my heart. It's right over there against the wall under the cross. You take one of the cups. They're not in anything, so please be careful not to knock them over. Take a cup and take one of the pieces of bread. And you can do it on your own, where you just go find a spot in the room and invite God into that moment. You can do it as a group of people if you want to grab a few friends. Please don't make this a time where you stand around and talk, where you get silly. This is something that we are called to do in honor of God, and we're going to continue to worship. And after you've taken the bread and the cup, please come back to your seat and just continue to join us in worship. If you're here this morning and you would not call yourself a Christian, you have not put your faith in Jesus, then go ahead and just stay where you're at, because this doesn't mean anything to you. And so we're going to take this moment. Let's just have a moment where we're quiet and we invite God to do that work in our heart. Lord Jesus, we confess that we lose sight of what you've called us to do. And God, I thank you for Paul. I thank you for the boldness that he had to call it out. And Lord, I confess that there are times that I allow my busyness or the things that I've got to do to become more important than inviting others in and making sure that people know that they're welcome. And God, I don't want that to happen anymore. Change my heart. Heal me. God, speak to the people who are here, that are established here, that have such incredible hearts and they have such incredible opportunities. Help them to see those opportunities and help them to be willing to step out of their groups and to make their way over to someone to make sure that they know they're loved and that they're welcome, God. But God, we need you to do this work in our heart. So just take a moment, go before God, and then when you're ready, go ahead and make your way over to the table.